fastest show in sports.
The NFL, Thursday Night Football, the Buffalo Bills hosting the Miami Dolphins. And I had been saying all week that if the Miami Dolphins lost this game, and I didn't, again, when I talk about winning and losing, I don't talk about point spreads because I guarantee you, there's a lot of people who made money on that game because I think at the last minute, the spread was the Dolphins were 12.5-point dogs. And if you got that 12.5 points, you did pretty well on a game where you were sweating throughout most of the game. But the most important thing to focus on here is the Dolphins. This is the biggest dumpster fire in the National Football League. And they proved it again last night. Look, don't tell me that the Dolphins actually played a good game. Don't tell me that they almost beat the Buffalo Bills. They lost in the end. It's the L. You have to just put it there. They're not that good. They're 0-3. They're not going to make the playoffs this season. Again, for Dolphin fans. And if you listen to the very first statement made by Dolphins head coach Mike McDaniel right after the game, it's easy to see why this team is such a complete disaster.
It feels like we lost a game. And it's not really, our expectation was to come in here and win the game, and we knew we had to not turn the ball over, and we knew we had to, try to get at least plus or at least even with them in the takeaway department. And we had to play good football and make some plays. And, we had a turnover in a critical situation. We had a critical penalty against on a punt. And those types of things can, that's how these types of games are decided. So it feels like a loss, and feels like we have a lot of motivation to get back to work for our next opponent.
Oh, I'm sorry. Are we on? Oh, okay. Whew. Why is it every time I hear Mike McDaniel talk, I think I'm hearing a guy who just skipped his 7th grade social studies class? I mean, this guy is the least effective head coach in the National Football League. Why anybody would want to get up and play for this guy is astounding. And here he is after the game. There it is, the best line. Feels like we lost the game. You did, Mike. You lost the game because you had bad penalties at a bad time. You lost the game because your starting quarterback has a poor and young offensive line in front of him and threw another interception late in the game. You made the mistakes late in the game. Sure, you did very well early on in the game. The Dolphins had the Bills right where they want them, right where they wanted them. They had them. They had perhaps one of the, if not the biggest upsets of the season right there in front of them. And they blew it. And the defense also blew it because you allowed that final score, the final drives. You did good in the first half. You didn't do good in the second half. It's time. Mike, you're fired. I mean, it really has to be dead man walking when McDaniel walks in to meet ownership on the Friday morning after the game. Mike McDaniel, you're fired. You're out. That's it. And right after you and Mike, look, this is nothing personal. You got to realize something here, all right? People like me, we've been covering the National Football League for decades, for a long time. We have seen coaches come and go in every single sport. Rarely have I ever gone into a situation where I'm going to make it personal. Now, there are a couple of coaches out there I've dealt with who, quite frankly, I'm glad they got fired. I wanted them to get fired. I'm glad their lives were over. I'm glad their earning potential went down the tubes because they're just nasty, rotten people. And they deserve it. And no, I'm not going to get it. Maybe one of these days I'll get into it, but not right now. But there are guys and gals out there who deserve to be fired because they're jackasses. They're just completely nasty people. McDaniel's not one of them. I mean, I don't know the guy personally. I really don't. But I know he seems to be an okay guy. He never stole a freight train. But in the same breath, he's an awful National Football League coach. He's in way over his head. After you fire Mike McDaniel, see, this is where it gets a little bit tricky here because, again, you got to come up with somebody who can then take the team for the rest of the season. And, of course, somebody will rise from the assistant coaches' ranks. But then you've got to think about the general manager because Chris Grier is the guy who put this team together. A lot of time coaches have input at least on what goes on, and you got to figure that McDaniel had input, but not that much. Grier built this team. But you can't fire him now. If you fire coach and general manager, you may as well just shut the doors and surrender every game this season. You're going to have out-and-out mutiny, and the players are going to be running the show. And that, again, is indeed the inmates running the asylum. You can't do it. So you got to fire McDaniel now. Now. Save whatever you have of the season. Get ready for next year. That's what it all comes down to. You're 3 games into the season right now. You're dead in the water. You're not going to go to the playoffs. You're not going to win the Super Bowl. This season is a complete wash. So you get rid of the flotsam and jetsam. You toss it off the side, and you start to rebuild now. And as a matter of fact, if you do this, you may even want to start looking around at trades. What do the Dolphins have? Tua may have some trade value. Tyreek Hill may have some trade value. Waddle may have some trade value. There's a couple of other players that probably will. Maybe you trade them, load up some picks, do something, surrender the season. The season tickets are basically in the bag right now. You're still going to get your revenue sharing from the National Football League. It's not like if you tank the season that they're going to hold money back from you. And the fans couldn't be more pissed off. It's literally impossible. Look, if you take it right now, and the Dolphins aren't going to win every single game, maybe they go 9-8. That's not good enough for the playoffs. You can't make it like that. So you got to get rid of McDaniel, and then you have to tell Grier pretty much that he's on a leash. But see, Grier is going to know that he's on the leash right now. He has to. You have to figure that Grier is looking for his next job. It makes sense. Now, where his next job will be, because the last time I checked, Walmart is the only one hiring in South Florida. It may take him a little time, but he's the one who put this mess together. Eventually, when you get to the 2026 season, the Miami Dolphins have to be a completely revamped, redone, re-engineered franchise. And the problem with it is people will always say in here, well, let's get rid of Tua while we're at it. Tua is not a bad quarterback. He makes some bad decisions. He's not a GOAT. He's not a Tom Brady. But he's also not a dead-in-the-water rook who, quite frankly, is going to cost you games. Why does he cost you games with interceptions? Because he's got an offensive line in front of him who's made of children. Relative infants in the National Football League who barely have any observational skills whatsoever about what's coming at them. Yeah, they played college ball, and yeah, they're pros, but they're not that good. So Tua has got to make it better, and he hasn't been able to because he's got a lousy offensive line. He's got great receivers. He's got a good running back. He's got the starts there, but you still don't have the offensive line. Maybe Tua's the guy you get rid of. Who knows? Maybe Tua's the guy you keep. But my point always comes down to this. If you're going to fire Mike McDaniel, who runs the show? If you're going to get rid of Tua, who's your quarterback? If you're going to get rid of Chris Grier, who's your general manager? You have to make these decisions. These are the tiny things that nobody ever thinks of. When fans scream, it's time to get rid of him, fire him! What do you do next? Nobody really knows at this point. It's a shame because the Miami Dolphins were once one of those franchises that were just considered to be a legacy franchise. Yeah, they weren't an original NFL franchise, but because of what Don Shula wrought, the undefeated seasons, the 2 Super Bowl years back-to-back, Dan Marino, some of the great things that they had happened to them in the 80s, you would think that they would be considered a team, at least a franchise that people would respect. Nobody respects these Miami Dolphins right now. I guarantee it. When the Buffalo Bills were preparing for that Thursday night game, they got ready for a certain type of team. They can respect them to a certain point, knowing full well that it's still a professional football game and anything can happen. But I got news for you. A lot of players are now lining up against the Dolphins going, come on, we can take these guys. They're not that good. It's an embarrassing franchise. It's an embarrassing season to watch. And it simply is just the kind of a campaign that you want to forget. So, put it to bed. It's over. Dolphin fans, I'm sorry for you. Again, you're the ones that got to put up with this, and you're the ones who are paying the freight, which is always my big stink when it comes down to the NFL. You've got terrible owners and terrible franchises, and fans, you don't get a discount. You still got to pay the full boat. You're paying for this boat right now, and it's unfair to the fans.
That's all, folks.